The captain knew his ship was sinking. He made one choice that would haunt maritime law for a century. September 27, 1854. The SS Arctic, a 800-ton iron steamship, was cutting through the North Atlantic with 365 souls aboard, crew, passengers, women, children, all headed toward New York. The weather was clear. The captain, James Luce, had logged 40 years at sea. He knew the odds of collision in open water. They were small. At 2:30 in the afternoon, the lookout spotted a sail on the horizon. The Vesta, a small French fishing bark, was heading directly toward them. Both vessels were moving. Both captains could see each other now. What happens next depends entirely on who blinks first and what they believe the other man will do. Captain Luce made his calculation. The Vesta was smaller. The Arctic was faster, heavier, powered by steam. In his judgment, based on 40 years of experience, the Vesta would alter course. He ordered no change in speed or heading. He was wrong. The collision came at 2:45 p.m. The Vesta's bow punched through the Arctic's starboard side like a knife through canvas. The impact was violent enough to throw men to the deck. But Captain Luce still didn't understand what had just happened. The Arctic had survived worse in her 5 years of service. Surely this was repairable. Within 30 minutes, Luce descended into the hull himself. What he found changed everything. The collision had opened a seam nearly 80 feet long. Water was pouring in faster than the pumps could handle. His ship was dying. He had maybe 4 to 5 hours before she went under. And he had 365 people who didn't know it yet. Here's what you need to understand. Luce was a strategist facing incomplete information under time pressure. He knew the lifeboats could hold 166 people maximum. He had 365. He knew rescue ships might be nearby. The Vesta was still afloat and other vessels used these routes. But he didn't know how long help would take. He didn't know if it would come at all. At 3:15 p.m., Luce ordered the lifeboats uncovered. He did not order an evacuation. He ordered the crew to begin loading women and children first, the custom of the era codified in maritime tradition. But he kept the boats at the davits not lowered. He was still hoping. He was still calculating. Maybe rescue would arrive. Maybe the pumps would hold. But the water kept rising. By 4 p.m., the Arctic's bow was visibly lower. The tilt became obvious. Panic rippled through the passengers. Men, not women, not children, began rushing toward the boats. The social contract of women and children first collided with raw survival instinct. Luce made another decision. He would not stop them by force. The first lifeboat launched at 4:30 p.m. with roughly 30 people aboard. It was rated for 45. The second boat followed minutes later, but the Arctic was sinking faster now. The angle steepened. The remaining boats became impossible to launch. They swung inboard, suspended uselessly from their ropes. Men jumped. They clung to spars and floating debris. The water was 40 degrees Fahrenheit. At 5:15 p.m., less than 3 hours after collision, the SS Arctic's bow went vertical. Her stern rose into the air. The ship broke in half with a sound witnesses described as a single immense groan. She slid beneath the surface. Of 365 people aboard, approximately 322 were now in the freezing Atlantic with nothing but floating wreckage and the lifeboats that had gotten away. What happened next was a numbers game played in water that killed in minutes. The lifeboats had room for perhaps 100 more people. The ocean held 322. Some men held onto the lifeboats' gunwales, their bodies slowly going numb. Others tried to swim. The lifeboats couldn't take on water, they'd sink too. The crew made the brutal calculation: save the boat, leave the others. The rescue ship Cambria found the first lifeboat at dawn on September 28th. Then the Arctic, then another. By midday, 86 people had been pulled from the water or the boats. Only 1 woman and 1 child survived from among all the women and children aboard. The rest were gone. The boats had prioritized crew and male passengers. The tradition had been inverted. When Captain Luce reached New York, he faced immediate scrutiny. Why didn't he lower the lifeboats sooner? Why didn't he order the men to obey the women first protocol? Why did he prioritize hope over action? The inquiry concluded he was negligent. He was blamed for the deaths of 322 people. His career was over. His reputation became synonymous with disaster. But here's what historians understand now that contemporary courts didn't. Luce faced a genuine strategic dilemma with no good answers. He couldn't know the collision would be fatal until it was too late. He couldn't command the ocean to keep the lifeboats stable. He couldn't force 365 people into boats rated for 166. Every decision he made was rational given what he knew at that moment. The SS Arctic sank 170 years ago. She rests on the ocean floor, a wreck among thousands. But her story didn't end in water, it ended in courtrooms and newspapers. It raised a question that maritime law still grapples with. When disaster strikes and there aren't enough lifeboats, who decides who lives? And can we fairly judge that choice afterward? What we know is this: 322 people died. 1 woman survived. 1 child survived. The captain made decisions under pressure with incomplete information, and we spent 170 years telling ourselves we would have done better. Maybe we would have, maybe not. The Arctic reminds us that some choices have no winning answer, only survivors and ghosts. Subscribe every week. We uncover a new maritime mystery where the real story emerges only when you look at what people knew, not what we judge them for.